In this video, we're going to look at decimal relationships. We're going to focus on finding fractions and percents. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to convert decimals to fractions. A decimal can be converted to a fraction by first reading the decimal. So I would read this one as 25 hundredths. The second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to write the fraction as you read the decimal. So if I read this as 25 hundredths, that means my numerator is going to be 25 and my denominator is going to be 100. So I would read it as 25 hundredths, just the same way as I read my decimal. And then third, I'm going to simplify or reduce my fraction. So here I have 25 hundredths or 25 over 100. I can divide both of those by 25, and that gets me a fraction of 1/4. Let's take a look at these three decimals. So the first one, I see that there are two numbers to the right of the decimal. So that's the hundredth spot. So I would read this as 85 hundredths. And so then I would write it as 85 over 100. Can reduce that down by dividing both of these by 5. And that gives me 17 over 20. Here I have one number to the right of the decimal. And so that's the tenth spot. So that means I would read that as 3/10. So my fraction would be 3 over 10. Can't reduce that anymore. So I would stay with 3/10. Here I have three numbers after the decimal. And so that means the last 7 is in the thousandths spot. So that means I would have 377 over 1000. And again, I can't reduce that down anymore. So I would stay with that fraction. So these three decimals, again, one number after the decimal. So that's tenths. So that would be 2/10. And I can reduce that down by dividing both of these by 2. And that gives me 1/5. Here I have three numbers after the decimal. And so the 3 is in the thousandths place. And so again, I would have 823 over 1000. And I can't reduce that down anymore. And then the last one here, I have 1 and 64 hundredths because the 4 is two spaces after the decimal. So when I write that, I would have 1 and 64 hundredths. Again, I have my whole number here because I have a whole number here. Now, with the 64 hundredths, I can divide both of these by 4. And so I end up with 1 and 16 over 25. So now we're going to convert decimals to percents. A decimal can be converted to a percent by multiplying by 100. So let's take a look at that first. So here I have 54 hundredths. I'm going to multiply it by 100, and that gives me 54. And so then making it into a percent would be 54%. So whatever I get this times 100, I get this number, and that number becomes my percent. Or moving the decimal two places to the right. So here I have my decimal. So I go once, twice, and that makes the number 54. So again, my percent is 54%. So let's take a look at these two decimals. So again, I can move my decimal two places to the right, or I can multiply by 100. They're doing the same exact thing. So here is once, twice, and so that gives me 85, and then that makes it 85%. So here's one, but then I need to go a second time. So that means I need to put a 0 here. So that gives me 30, and then that makes it 30%. Here I have once, twice, and my decimal now is between the two sevens. So I have 3 7 decimal 7, or 37 and 7 tenths. And again, I just put my percent sign there, and it makes it 37 and 7 tenths percent. Again, here I go once, and then I'm going to go twice, but I need to put a 0 here. So that gives me 20. And again, that becomes 20%. Last two here. So I'm moving this once, twice. So that gives me 82 and 3 tenths. So that becomes 82 and 3 tenths percent. And here again, I have a whole number of 1, and then I move my decimal once, twice. So that gives me 164%. And again, this number is higher than 100 because I already have a whole number of 1 plus some extra. So that gives me, again, 164%.